For many years, I've been reporting on FEMA camps, emergency centers, martial law preparations. And it wasn't because I had a crystal ball or because I'm psychic. It's because I came into possession of public executive orders, documents, preparation plans many years ago, just a few years after I got involved with this TV show and then with a local radio show and then syndicated radio now 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago. I became informed and educated on this by you, the listeners, you, the viewers. And then, of course, with the advent of the Internet in the mid-1990s, we got access to the U.S. government documents right off of the Library of Congress, right off of the Army and Pentagon's own websites. So we've been able to chronicle much of what's happening, and there has been a massive 3-decade-long secret, quasi-secret, and now public preparation for martial law and mass internment of the American people. And that doesn't mean Arab terrorists or even political dissidents. That means the American people. That's what corruption, fascism, command and control is about. It's about having an elite who can give themselves all the weapons contracts, who can engage in bid rigging or no bid contracts, who can engage in war profiteering, who can march your sons and daughters off to war for global empire. Having wars internationally and domestic police states is about securing the fortunes and the expanding fortunes of corrupt elites throughout history. And tyrannies, despotisms, are much more common in history than free societies. Free societies, as I've said many times, are incredibly rare and incredibly precious. They are almost unknown. And America is not immune to this, and it's being set up. In fact, in my first film, America Destroyed by Design, we have clips of that up on Infowars.com right now for free. People can go watch them. We go through the FEMA camps, Rex 84, and show Senate hearings where they admit that they have these camps. Now, in the last few weeks, a lot more of this has become public, not just public in the documents, but public in newspapers, putting the spin on it that this is a good idea. Now, in the last week, there's been a lot of news articles and editorials written against it by mainstream newspapers, mainstream reporters. So now it's gone from this thing that isn't kosher to discuss, the tinfoil hat crowd, to being mainstream news. So I'm going to try to go over some of this right now. There is so much going on. There is so much happening. Let me just go over the camps. Now, understand, the way the shadow government, which shadow government now public, the continuity of government FEMA system works, the way this works is they'll report on one tiny part of the program. And there'll be all this news coverage on that tiny little bit, just like NSA spying. But then over the years, we have seen many different parts of it, so we're able to put it together and give you a very clear picture. So when you hear 300-something million for some camps, then you got to link through on our site to mainstream purchase filings federally where they put out the bids for 3 1 million man camps in late 2002. And there are hundreds of these. Okay, there are hundreds of these filings and purchases and bids, and this is what we do every week. We see this. We have millions of listeners that, hey, I checked this federal filing. Hey, I'm a federal prison guard. Hey, I work for FEMA. Check this out. It's public. I can't tell you what's classified, but this is public. Here it is. Hey, Alex, I work at the Pentagon. Why haven't you reported on this? It's been out for a year. Because I don't know everything and I can't track everything. We covered the 1996 declassification of the secret program going on since 86 when Rex 84 was started, and that's all we knew about. I put a copy of the synopsis, the summary, right there inside of my book, 9/11 Descent into Tyranny. And now you can read the summary of change and how they've expanded it. And this is hundreds of pages. This is just the summary, and it's 25 pages long. You can read the summary of change. Now, this is on the Army's website. I want you to understand that. PDF file, Acrobat file. This is Headquarters, Department of the Army, Civilian Inmate Labor Camp Program. Peter J. Shoemaker, who ran the wet work on the American people at Waco. And I could go all into Shoemaker. This guy's completely psychopathic. There's probably going to be a big movie made about him. There's already a best-selling book out about him. Anyways, there's the current head of the Army, General Shoemaker. And you can go read Declassified, how they built 12 camps in secret in 86, and in secret for 10 years until partial declassification in 96, they had tens of thousands of American citizens working as slave labor in 12 camps. Now, why is it this front page of the Statesman? I don't know. Well, now it's been declassified further, and you can learn the latest information. And then you can do something really sick. You want to find out, you can do what I did, and this is why I didn't even get any sleep hardly last week looking at this. You can start looking at subpages and subdocuments and searching keywords off of here, and then you'll find out even more. Do you have the will to do it? Instead of just denying what I'm saying. Army Regulation 210-35, Civilian Inmate Labor Camp Program. We make it easy for you. You can go to Infowars.com. We have hyperlinks to this, and in articles we've written about it, we have hyperlinks. Or just don't. Some people don't believe hyperlinks off my site. So just type it into Google, and you can go find it. Now, what is in here? What has now been picked up by mainstream news publications and even picked up by some mainstream newspapers? We now know what the secret Homeland Security plan is called. And guess what the new camp expansion program first reported on in the Houston Chronicle 3 weeks ago is called? Boys and girls, do you know what it's called? Guess. The program is called End Game. End of game. End game. I've actually written articles titled End Game years ago. End Game of the New World Order, concentration camps in America. It blew me away. I wrote an article years ago calling it End Game, and then their program is called End Game. That's real cute. That's real funny. And before I get into more detail on this, I just wanted to read this BBC article to you, posted at prisonplanet.com, but it's big news today, so most of you probably heard about this. Simpsons trump First Amendment. The average American could list 3 Simpson characters, but could not list 2 of the rights of the 5 in the First Amendment. Freedom to set up a religion. Freedom that it cannot be regulated in any way, no law shall be made. Freedom of speech. Freedom of the press. Freedom to assemble and petition the government of a redress of grievances. They say there's 5 rights. There's really 6 in there, but they said of the 5. See, even the people writing the articles don't know there's 6 in there, but let's just go with what they said. There's 5, and so the average American can't. 1 in 1,000. 1 in 1,000 Americans in this poll could list all 5. And 1 out of 200 could list 2. And it's not that you're stupid. You know all of the porno stars. You know everything about them, most of you, don't you? You know everything about perfumes. You know everything about the best doctor for a breast implant. Men know football scores going back 50 years and what car the quarterback drives, and oh my God, aren't they cool? So you're not stupid, but your mind is built for detail. Your mind is built for memory. Your mind is built to be informed. But in the past, humans were into how to grow crops to survive, how to be able to fight enemies off, how to not be scammed, how to pick when to plant, when to migrate, when to move. But we got fat, dumb, and happy, so all that energy about survival that we're designed, okay, somebody 100 years ago acted just like me. People went to town hall meetings every week. They went to the soapbox. They got in fist fights at the bar about politics. People were ready to die over this stuff. People knew our freedom's precious. Everybody else is slaves. Don't you try to take my land. I don't trust the government. That's what made America America. Now it's just, man, I know all the football scores. First Amendment, what's that? They ain't violating my rights. Well, what are your rights? I don't know what they are. So, I'm not saying you can't watch baseball. I like it too. I'm not saying you can't go fishing. I'm not saying you can't go water skiing or snow skiing. I'm not saying you can't, go out and have a good time with your friends. Go see a movie. But you got to be balanced, folks. Spend a little time on that and spend a lot more time with your family and spend more time, checking your I saw a report that most Americans are getting ripped off on their phone bills and on power bills, and you don't even challenge them now. You're just, I don't care, I'm lazy, TV's on. There's just criminality going on everywhere. Take control of your life. People think it's frustrating and horrible and not. It's addictive to be informed and to be involved. So Americans know more about the Simpsons TV show than the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment, an opinion poll reports. And it goes on, only 1 in 4 could name more than one of the 5 freedoms it upholds. And it says another finding, telephone survey of 1,000 random adults, found that only 22% of Americans could name all 5 Simpson characters. And here, I shouldn't go off the radio. I read this earlier today, reported on it, and heard national radio say 1 in 1,000. So that was wrong when I heard ABC radio say that. It was that the poll was of 1,000. So it's 22% Americans could name all 5. So I was incorrect. By comparison, 1 in 1,000 people can name all 5 First Amendment freedoms. So there I am correcting myself and saying ABC's wrong when they weren't. I apologize. Just there's so much of this. How do you keep track of it all? So it is true. 1 in 1,000 can name all 5 First Amendment freedoms. I was confused by the 2 different polls. So they were quoting another poll. I guess they did 2 polls with the same questions, 2 different polling firms. So that's what's going on here. That's what's happening here. And so Bush can get up and go, the Constitution says I can spy on you. When it says that he should be arrested, federal law. And it's like Bill Clinton could get up there and just lie. You know how Democrats feel right now? They don't know why Republicans won't wake up to how corrupt and evil Bush is. And they go, what's wrong with you people? Well, what was wrong with you with Bill Clinton? The guy was a complete crook. But he was just a front man for the very same interest. He vacations with the Bushes. It is staged. Now let's get into the camps. 10-year U.S. strategic plan for detention camps, revised proposals from Oliver North. Now, we already did this article days ago, but today, Pacific News Service, very respected, came out with their own report with links with the claims they make to the Library of Congress and the National Security Archive. So see, it isn't their opinion. And it says the Halliburton subsidiary, KBR, formerly known as Kellogg Brown and Root, announced that they would get a $385 million contingency contract for emergency FEMA centers for illegal aliens, influxes of migrants, and during emergencies. And then you read deeper, and for political dissidents. And then we have one of the Senate chairman of one of the committees telling Alberto Gonzales 2 weeks ago that we need to start arresting the peace activists because they're aiding terrorists. They're really a fifth column. Just what the Deputy Attorney General Calhoun, Van Wiekle, one of his deputies is Calhoun, told the Oakland Tribune 3.5 years ago on the eve of the last war in the buildup, saying, well, protesting aids terrorists, so you're not allowed to do that. So I'm just going to read these articles. Instead of simply paraphrasing them, let me just read to you, and they're all very long, but as best I can, I'm going to read at least part of these, folks. Okay? And what's important is the exact story we're hearing now is the declassified Rex 84 plan, where they were talking about staging terror attacks or staging other events and taking over America. Here's another one out of Alternet, Bush's mysterious new programs. And there have been a bunch of mainstream newspapers that have then also quoted this and done their own research that we have posted on the website, a huge section on this. But this Alternet is one of the best reports I've seen, and it is 7 pages of tiny print. But I suggest that you go look at this for yourself. I mean, this is worth it to spend some time on this. But before I get into the new secret operation, now partially declassified, codenamed Endgame, let me just read an article that Paul Watson and I wrote just 2 days ago. Gulags for American citizens in final planning stages. Halliburton sex slave trade criminals prepare camps for political dissidents. You're going, what? Yeah, just to show you the criminality of these people, we have a link to the Chicago Tribune where they openly run white slavery rings, and they have open lobbyists in D.C., 2 full-time paid lobbyists, just lobbying the government, the Pentagon, not to enforce current federal law. I mean, this really, I can't believe I'm reading this. I can't believe this is admitted. It makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. This is scary. Halliburton runs the camps in Europe, many of them. They run the camps in the Middle East. They run Camp X-Ray, now being expanded, thousands more beds. They now are going to run the camps domestically. I mean, this is the real deal. This is happening. I'm not trying to scare you, folks. Going along with this and thinking if you just shut up, you'll be okay isn't the answer. If you go along with it, they've already openly said they're going to take all pension funds. All. They've openly said into this new system they're going to take the private property from the general public. They've changed the Supreme Court's ruled that. Private interest want it, they get it. We're going over to feudalism. Now, they're having a lot of trouble doing this. A lot of people in government are angry. A lot of whistleblowers are going public. They're on the edge, okay? The Bush administration's committed tons of felonies and just saying, we don't care if it's a felony, we can do it. We can torture children. We can enforce the Patriot Act even if you don't pass it. We can give no-bid contracts to our friends. We can do whatever we want. Gulags for American citizens in final planning stages. Halliburton sex slave trade criminals prepare camps for political dissonance. Bush administration, U.S. Army preparations to target American citizens and in turn them enforce labor camps has vastly accelerated in the past month, and commentators from across the political spectrum are sounding the alarm bells that the roundups may begin soon after another government staged op, another government attack. Once the bane of the media's stereotypical tinfoil hat-wearing caricatures, concentration camps in America are now serious news, and no one's laughing. In fact, Bush administration known paid operatives like Tommy Franks, who gets almost $500,000 a year, it's now admitted one of their paid fake media people. He'll always claim I'm independent saying this, and it turned out he was paid. I'm sorry to say we're going to need martial law for the next attack. You see, I'm real sorry. That's what'll keep you safe, though. Don't you want to be safe? Following the news, first given wide attention by this website, that Halliburton subsidiary Kellogg Brown and Root have been awarded the $385 million contract by Homeland Security to construct detention and processing facilities in the event of a national emergency. The alternate group put together an alarming report that collated all the latest information on plans to initiate internment of political subversives and Muslims after the next major terror attack in the U.S. And here is that report, actually originally done by Nat Perry and Consortium News. And it's just all the stuff we've already reported, kind of condensed into one larger package. The article highlighted the disturbing comments made by Senator Lindsey Graham, who encouraged torturing, supporting Alberto Gonzales to target, quote, fifth columnist Americans who show disloyalty and sympathize with the enemy by protesting the war, whoever that enemy may be. It is important to stress that the historical precedent mirrors exactly what the Halliburton Group deal outlines. Oliver North's Reagan-era Rex 84 plan proposed rounding up 400,000 refugees under FEMA in the event of uncontrolled population movements, and went on to say it was a cover to arrest political dissidents. We've played those video clips here of the Senate hearings where this was discussed in '86. It continues. There's a photo of North and Poindexter, who now runs the Total Information Awareness Network, which is found to be illegal. He's a convicted felon himself, and they just changed the name and continued it illegally. The real agenda, just as it was with Halliburton gulags, was to use the cover of rounding up immigrants and illegal aliens as a smokescreen for targeting political dissidents. From 67 to 71, the FBI kept a list of persons to be rounded up as subversive, dubbed the ADEX list, ADEX list. The current terrorist suspect list was recently revealed to contain the names of 325,000 people, of course, most of them Americans, and it shows that in the UK it's 119,000. Halliburton, through their KBR subsidiary, is the same company that built most of the major detention camps in Iraq and Afghanistan. KBR have been embroiled in human sex slave trade that the representatives have lobbied to continue. There's a link to the Chicago Tribune right there. See, you don't just have to believe us. We make that claim. You think I just year after year can make these claims if they're not true? There's a hyperlink right there. we have a company that has been handed a contract to build prison camps in America that is engaging in trafficking in young girls and women, and I would add boys as well. Can this horror movie get it any more frightening? A much discussed and circulated report, the Pentagon Civilian Inmate Labor Camp Program, has recently been updated, and the revision details the, quote, the template for developing agreements between the Army and the corrections facilities for the use of civilian inmate labor camp on Army installations. The plan is clearly to swallow up disenfranchised groups like prisoners and Muslims at first, and then extend that policy to include fifth columnists, otherwise known as anyone who disagrees with the government or exercises their constitutional rights. Respected author Peter Dale Scott speculated that the detention centers could be used to detain American citizens if the Bush administration were to declare martial law. Well, what do you mean? That's in the legislation, in the executive orders. Daniel Ellsberg, former Special Assistant Secretary of Defense, called the plan preparation for a roundup after the next 9/11 for Mideasterners, Muslims, and possibly dissenters. They've already done this on a smaller scale with the special registration detention of immigrant men from Muslim countries, and with Guantanamo Bay, also run by Halliburton, I would add. George Bush has declared himself to be a dictator and claims he has the supreme power over and above the limitations of the U.S. Constitution. Bush administration officials like Alberto Gonzales have declared Bush above the law. Links to mainstream documents on that. White House advisors have openly discussed the legality of crushing children's testicles in front of their parents. Hyperlinks to mainstream news on that. As part of the war on terror, preparation for the internment of thousands of Americans who are disloyal in times of emergency are afoot. The next step is clearer than it has ever been. One more large-scale terror attack in America, and the result will be martial law, with even famous singers like Morrissey are being detained and questioned by the Secret Service and the FBI and, of course, British intelligence for speaking out against the American and British governments. We know we are in a lot of trouble. So there's the article we wrote about it, filled with dozens of hyperlinks. There's more than 12 in there. And here is, of course, the labor camp, the latest information. And people are currently at these, okay? They've gone from 12 to now over 50. They're all over the country, and they're in secure installations with machine gun wire around them, and they're just getting the military trained with car thieves and bank robbers and federal criminals on these, and they make them work on these installations, former military bases, and now they've got state convicts going to them, and the military runs it. And it was classified for 10 years. Imagine, for 10 years, from 86 to 96, there were 12 camps doing this in secret. And then in 96, they declassified it. Now they've expanded past 50. No news articles about that. Can you imagine, instead of the Houston Chronicle going, a plan to deal with illegal aliens and political dissenters, Halliburton will run it? Can you imagine if the paper said, well, Halliburton's involved in white slavery and they're torturing people and running things at all these different camps, admittedly, and now they're setting it up here domestically. I mean, this is admitted. Do you understand that the government is totally criminal? All the institutions are totally illegitimate. We've gone completely off the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Now, here is the story from New American Media, Pacific News Service. This is all up at Infowars.com by Peter Dale Scott. And it goes right through, quote, Operation Endgame, and admits that there are all these different programs and that they are setting up these camps all over the country, and they have links to all the declassified stuff. Both the contract and the budget allocation are in partial fulfillment of an ambitious 10-year Homeland Security strategic plan codenamed Endgame, authorized in 2003, partially declassified last year, according to the 49-page Homeland Security document on the plan. That's just the summary that's public. Endgame expands a mission first articulated in the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798. Its goal is the capability to remove all removable aliens, including illegal economic migrants, aliens who've committed criminal acts, asylum seekers required to be retained by law, and potential terrorists, American citizens under enemy combatant designation. Now, remember last year, and we were able to defeat it. It was front page in the TV stations and in the Providence Journal in Providence, Rhode Island. At the time, I had an affiliate that's since sold, but I had a good station. literally 300 yards. The tower was 300 yards. The station was 300 yards from the Capitol. And it was the big station, 50,000 water. And we're on there. And we're openly reading the newspaper when it was first reported. We have these all saved and posted on the website. But just type Providence Journal, martial law, and Providence Journal. I forget the exact headline, but they're all on my website. You can find them with search engines. And the governor said, anyone criticizing the government, anyone protesting the war, anyone burning a flag, they know that sounds good. I'm not for burning flags, folks, I love, but the flag symbolizes the right to burn it. It's the spirit of the flag. And anyone involved in unlawful protest, anything, you're going to get life in prison. And it was, and then 3 days after, we literally had crowds around the Capitol. We had local talk show hosts there. Jack Blood lived there at the time. It's about a year and a half ago. Masses of people showing up. And the station got bought real quick after that and changed its format, of course. Shutting it. That was activism. I mean, it was in the paper saying, the paper said, this is good, we like it, we hope it passes. But we could read right there where it said, people freaked out. I mean, people were in the streets. They heard me talking about it. They saw it. And then it was in the paper. Huge revolt. People showing up by the thousands and thousands of phone calls. Governor apologizes, said Homeland Security wrote the bill and gave it to him, and he's a good Republican, and he's sorry. And then 5 days after that initial article, and we covered it the day it came out, boom. That's because we had a station, see? That's why these affiliates I've got around the country are so precious, because we had activism. The people were able to be warned, hey, they're declaring martial law. I mean, there was a bill, Senate Bill 743. Just type into Google, Oregon law puts protesters in labor camp. And it'll come up. It's all over my website. Links to it's still on their website at the State House in Oregon. And you click on it, and it takes you right there. By the way, Ohio just passed these laws, by the way. It did pass there. A month and a half ago, they did pass these similar laws in Ohio. So it's called the Ohio Patriot Act. But Oregon, a Senator Menace, no pun intended, that's his name, head of the Judiciary Committee, almost got it passed. From a couple votes, it failed. And it said it had 120-something crimes. And a lot of stuff that, we all agree, 99% of Americans, is bad. Child molesters, life in prison, forced labor camp. Bank robbers, life in prison, forced labor camp. But that's cruel and unusual. But then it said downloading music, protesting without a permit. Go read the 120-something things. Firearms violations, not filling out a firearms form right, writing a hot check. Life in prison, and it said forced forest labor camp. In fact, a Google search for forced forest labor camp or forest labor camp should get you the story. Not even the story. Incredibly, the Oregonian and AP reported on it, but they reported on it like they were talking about the price of salmon or the price of timber. It was just, if the law passes and looks like it will, you'll be given life in prison in a forced labor camp. If you download music, you'll be given life in prison in a forced labor camp. It was just calmly forced labor. Do you understand? The feds are bringing these bills into the states. They're actually trying it, and Ohio did it, though it was watered down to just, you must answer all questions. There is no Fifth Amendment, and you're given 5 years in prison if you don't answer all questions, and every misdemeanor is terrorism. And Governor Taft, Skull and Bones' great-great-grandson, married in with the Bushes, very evil folks. They're the ones that passed it. So it's called Endgame. And everything I've told you is documented. Everything I told you is going on. And why do they want it where you go to a forest labor camp if you protest? Because we're bankrupt by design. It was designed to do this. The IMF World Bank documents were made public 3.5 years ago. They set it up to bankrupt us. It's like when you start making money, they don't send you credit cards in the mail but maybe twice a year. When you're a college student eating ramen noodle, starving, basically, you get 2 or 3 every couple days in your mailbox. They want to shackle you. They have your demographics. They want to, it's so horrible what's happening. This is all going on. I'm not trying to scare you out there, folks. You need to be scared of not taking action on these subjects. You need to be scared of not getting involved.